I'm going to show you a few things that'll help you get started with your Harbor Freight rock tumbler. There's a few things that you can do to it to make it last much longer. These things tend to have issues if you don't treat them right from the start. So let me show you a few steps you can start off with, and it'll make a big difference on it. This tumbler has been running pretty much non-stop for about a month. This is the second one that I have, and from what I learned with the first one, there's some changes you can make right up front that'll really improve the life and how well this works. Let me set these canisters to the side. When you start off at the beginning with, before you even first start it up, the belts tend to be a little bit tight on them. So on the side here, there's an adjustment to where you can loosen these just slightly and then slide it forward and back. And really the optimal position of these belts, you want just a little bit of a bulge up and down on it here. With it, you can see it sort of looks like it sticks up, so you want it, this portion pulled back just tight enough to where it'll pull this pulley back and you get just a little bit of movement. Like I said, from the factory they tend to be too tight, so usually you have to loosen these and almost always move them forward just slightly to get a little bit of movement up and down. You don't want it so loose that the belt slips, but you want it just tight enough that it'll grab well with a heavy barrel on it, but not be so tight that it'll burn the belt up. And then once you come back, just tighten these up really snug where they don't move after that, and it'll make a world of difference. This one doesn't have the top metal piece on it, and I recommend you leave that off unless you have kids around, where they can stick their fingers in there and get shocked. There's actually enough stuff going on in here you can hurt somebody pretty bad. But it needs to dissipate that heat quite a bit. Any heat buildup will cause your belts to go faster, causes the motors and the bushings and bearings to run out a lot quicker before you have to replace it. Before you put the barrels in, there's these adjustment tabs on here that keep the barrels from scrubbing up against the side of here and hitting the paint and wearing on it. They tend to will burn down pretty quick. You can slide them, move them in and out like that to keep the barrels centered on here, but they don't work terribly well. You burn through them and they cause a lot of squeaks with them. One thing you can add are these little felt pads. You can buy them in just little small packages. Here we go, like these. Cut one of these right down the middle and then mount it on each side here. Now once you mount those, you can move your tabs just slightly in a bit, so if for some reason that pad would ever work loose, you still have this as a backup to keep it from scrubbing on the frame on it. This pad gets most of the action. The tumbler tends to work over toward the motor side with this one, no matter how much I balance it. They cause hardly any resistance on them, and it's even less resistance than this. And these pads last months before you may have to replace one out, and just little to almost no friction. If you put the pad where it strikes in the middle of the barrel, it has the least resistance. If you put the pad off to the side, it's going to put more strain on your motors here, whereas in the middle it's less resistance on the barrel and it'll cruise a lot smoother, and it'll basically just rest up against that pad and it won't rub on that block, and it'll save you a lot of hassle and aggravation listening to that loud thing go. And you can see, turn this on, it'll just sort of rest up against that pad and just barely bump into it, but it's really quiet like that. And aside from that, which is a huge difference, these bushings will wear out if you don't pay close attention to them. So right at the beginning, see where this moves in and out, it's good to use a really light lubricant. Let me show you what I use here. use this blaster. It's a multi-purpose lubricant. It's not a degreaser or rust inhibitor like a WD-40 is, and it'll stay in the bushings much longer, and it doesn't burn through them. You can tell by how much black material is coming out from the bushing itself. If it causes a lot of black buildup on that bushing right there, you know that it's really wearing through them fast. So if you take this, they have a little bit of flow to begin with, pull it away, put just a tiny drop right down on there, and then move it inward and work it in a little bit, and it'll spread throughout the bushing. And just a small drop on each side is all it really takes with it, and that'll last way longer than a AN1 oil, which tends to get built up and hold a lot of debris with it. Also, these things get tested at the factory, and a lot of times you'll get on this roller here, the bar, it'll have a bit of a buildup on it. So it's best to take a paper towel or whatever you can get and rub up any excess buildup that may be on there. And then as your rollers go through time, they'll get a little bit of rubber on it from the containers. They'll just sort of wear off rubber and build up here, and it causes them to bump around and bounce more and make more noise. So if you clean these, wipe them off every time that you go to change grit in your tumbler, they'll hold up and won't be quite as loud and bounce around again. You can replace these bushings with bearings, but I found with the first one of these I had, as long as I lubed it regularly and wipe off, just take a rag and so often wipe up any excess that works its way out, and then put another drop on it. Each tumble, you don't even have to go through each grit change, but after probably a month of running, you need to at least put another drop on there and work it into it. And I found these bushings on my other one, I had them without wearing out for almost a year and a half of constant running, and had no issues with it at all like that. They tend to be loud and vibrate a little bit, so whatever you can do to add some padding under them will make a difference. These things come with little small feet on them, and they're really hard rubber. If you can find a much softer rubber pad to put on there, it'll make a big difference in cutting down on the vibration. You can also use things like I've used these little pads that come from the dollar store. They have a good bit of cushion. It's just made as a garden knee pad, and they fit perfectly setting up under these, and it'll take up some of the cushion and cut down on vibration and noise that you get with the tumbler on it. But the biggest problem that you'll run into is these things overheating. So if you have any way that you can put it in a safe place to leave this top off and let air flow through, and make sure that there's also a gap in the bottom. The bigger the gap you have, the more airflow you're going to get, and the cooler it's going to stay. And these motors will last, for years if you just do some of those things to it. But for sure, try out the pads. The pads work great, and it'll cut down on any wear and tear on your tumbler. You don't get the paint scratches on here, and you definitely don't have the squeaks. And just doing those small steps will make your Harbor Freight tumbler a lot more enjoyable, and save you from having to spend a lot of money and upgrade to a little higher end tumbler as soon, and you'll still enjoy rock tumbling by yourself or with the kids. So it's worth giving it a shot. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Appreciate it.